Good morning, Dan and Amy. Dr. Sunetra Gupta is one of the leading epidemiologists in the world. She's a professor and infectious disease expert at Oxford University in the UK. We've spoken about her before because she, along with Martin Kulldorff at Harvard and Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, are the original drafters of the Great Barrington Declaration that has now more than 20,000 signatories that are from the medical and public health community. She is also somebody who's been mugged by the reality of the left and of the politicization of COVID-19 and the response. She writes at the American Institute for Economic Research, "Lockdown is a blunt, indiscriminate policy that forces the poorest and most vulnerable people to bear the brunt of the fight against coronavirus. As an infectious diseases epidemiologist, I believe there has to be a better way." And this is why she participated in the drafting of the alternative approach as memorialized in the Great Barrington Declaration. This is why she opposes lockdowns, because there has to be a better way. The cost outweighs the benefit. But she writes, "I was utterly unprepared for the onslaught of insults, personal criticism, intimidation, and threats that met our proposal. The level of vitriol and hostility, not just from members of the public online, but from journalists and academics, has horrified me." She said, she writes, "I am first and foremost a scientist, one who's far more comfortable sitting in my office or laboratory than in front of a television camera, not political. Although," she writes, "of course, I do have deeply held political ideals, ones that I would describe as inherently left-wing. I would not, it is fair to say, normally align myself with the Daily Mail," which is a conservative-leaning British tabloid. "I have strong views about the distribution of wealth, about the importance of the welfare state, about the need for publicly owned utilities and government investment in nationalized industries. But COVID-19 is not a political phenomenon. It's a public health issue." Well, it was a public health issue. Now it is a political phenomenon, isn't it? But it's interesting. Here again, we know the medical community, especially the public health community, and epidemiologists specifically, as a profession, lean far left. Or I should say lean decidedly left. I mean, an overwhelming majority identify left of some of the research I've seen into that particular profession. And Sunetra Gupta is one of them, except when it comes to her actual area of expertise, where she's a scientist. And she's making assessments based on the merits of the response to what she understands about the virus. And for that, now she's a charlatan. Just like that. You can go from one of the world's leading epidemiologists to a complete charlatan. What do you have to do? Disagree with the Western media, basically. And a few other epidemiologists who are more politician than scientists who want to take advantage of the climate to elevate their profile. And how do you become a celebrity? Agree with the Western media. David Gellertner, renowned computer science professor at Yale, had a good piece in the Journal on Friday, Wall Street Journal, about the fairy tale nature of what the left is selling the public as with respect to COVID-19, particularly Joe Biden. Instead of a careful, serious, scientifically informed, and fast solution to the COVID problem, Mr. Biden offers his good fairy waiting impatiently in the wings. The COVID fairy explains why Democrats can't answer any serious questions about their plan. Who will develop the new drugs? Roughly how long should it take? What kind of head start has the president's Operation Warp Speed supplied? Does the new approach center on disease management or a vaccine or both? How many vaccine doses will be available and for whom? Democrats are at a loss because the good fairy won't say. But the bottom line is this. One wave of her magic wand and the COVID fairy will make everything better.
Mm-hmm. And last night, Joe Biden, at one of his rallies, I think he had two, he said that Trump is the virus. And that will beat, I mean, come on.
Right.
Trump is not the virus.
Except David Gellertner makes the point, eventually a President Biden, were he to be elected, would be forced to do what Mr. Trump is doing already, provide as much federal support as possible for the new drugs and treatments we need. Well, yes, that's number one. In addition, more generally, I would add, he's going to be forced to do what Trump has been doing for the last 10 months as well, which is to say you have to make tough decisions in the real world where there are trade-offs that are going to be born as a result of the decisions you make. But the COVID fairy doesn't have to make those decisions. Just like the COVID fairy doesn't have to make decisions with respect to the infirmities of the attempted backdoor takeover of healthcare in America called Obamacare, which will now morph into Biden care with a public option to compete with private health insurance plans. So saith Joe Biden on the debate stage. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Chad Savage, founder of Your Choice Direct Care and policy advisor to the Heartland Institute. Dr. Savage, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning. Well, let's start with, before we get to the COVID fairy, let's start with the health insurance fairy in America and Joe Biden's plans to make health care better at lower cost for all Americans through more government control.
Yeah, well, actually, you laid it out really well, the Barrington Declaration, and I'm actually a co-signer of that as well.
Now you're a charlatan.
Not to open up a whole new can of worms there. I know you only got so much time for the segment, but yeah, actually, Biden talks a lot about healthcare, both in regard to COVID and in regard to financing healthcare, but he's very scant on the specifics. And what blows me away is what you can glean from what he said so far, and he's done this with posters and such large signs behind him during his speeches, that he's going to double down on the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare, Biden Care, which to me is just mind-boggling for people to actually buy that as a positive sentiment. They need only forget what's happened over the last 10 years. Actually, I used to be an insurance doc and hospital practice, and what drove me out of that into what's called direct primary care, which I work now directly for my patients, was the realization of what was going on within ACA. It was devastating, the practice of medicine. People seem to have forgotten, and the general, if you listen to the ads and his speeches, it sounds like healthcare didn't exist before ACA, and that's just simply not true. It was definitely broken at that time, but ACA didn't fix it. It kicked in the cracks and made them into huge holes. Just as an example, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Do you say your example?
Well, for example, the bureaucratic burden that was laid upon us, doctors became much less efficient between ACA and the HITECH Act, which was passed about the same time, so much so that we lost 20% of our ability to see patients. We essentially lost an entire day of productivity of seeing patients per week after the implementation of those laws. So that was not a beneficial thing. That was actually highly harmful.
So if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor was just a complete lie.
And that's the one everybody keeps going back to. That was only one of many, many, many problems with that law. That's just the one that people kind of remember and gravitate to. But you had mentioned the public option. Well, that's kind of what they're saying. Okay, they say, okay, we're going to go double down on ACA, which theoretically they're now saying is going to somehow cure COVID. Well, it's there now. If that were the case, why isn't COVID gone? But they actually have that in the advertisements for Joe Biden. They attribute ACA as part of the response to COVID. And I'm not sure how a financing law is going to fix this when we've dumped trillions of dollars into this issue. It's not as though money is in shortage when it comes to COVID. But the public option is a Trojan horse for a single-party payer, and that's not me speculating. If you go back and watch videos of Harry Reid, who was the majority leader of the Senate at that time, he was trying to placate the progressives in his party who were mad at them about ACA, not because they were proposing ACA, but because they were arguing it didn't go far enough. They wanted to go immediately to a single-party payer. And he said, calm down, we can't do that. Political will is not there. We have to do this in steps. ACA is stage one of a multi-step approach to single-party payer. Well, we're at step two now, and that's the public option. So a publicly subsidized governmental insurance plan will put out of business all the privately funded plans, which will, over a period of years and through attrition, result in a single-party payer plan, whether they explicitly say that or not.
So the short of it is the top line for people, the 185 million Americans who have private health insurance, and Joe Biden says he distinguished himself from Bernie Sanders in the primary. I'm not interested in taking away your private health insurance, and then embraced Bernie Sanders after he was the nominee. The bottom line is all he is doing is slow walking you to the same place Bernie Sanders wants to fast walk you.
Exactly, and that's why Bernie signed on, right? I mean, Bernie is in support of him. He's bought on to the Biden health care plan, which means they probably had some talks behind the scenes indicating that they're going to end up in the same place. Harris, Biden, and Warren would not all be talking about either vice president or cabinet level positions if they weren't really just the same person in different sheepskin.
I wanted to, since you are a Great Barrington Declaration signatory and you made mention of COVID, get your reaction from a practitioner in the space, a pediatrician here in Illinois. The surge you're hearing about in the media is real. Hospitalizations hospitals are up. ICU beds are reaching capacity. Our numbers of patients who test positive in our offices is up. More employees are reporting exposures, mostly from household contacts. For the most part, this is not just due to school reopening. It's not due to travel. It's not due to eating at restaurants. The driving force behind the current surge seems to be gatherings in homes, birthday parties, larger family get-togethers, informal dinner parties, and so forth. We've known this actually for some time, that transmission mainly occurs in households, and so the response is to lock people in their houses until at some point there's a vaccine. Then will that allow them to come out and re-engage with their neighbors and reconnect with their businesses and so forth. That seems to be the policy. They didn't put it in those words, but those are the words. And so they're using, they're telling a lie. I mean, they're doing exactly what they accused President Trump of doing. They're telling a lie about one thing in order to get an outcome they want. They're telling a lie about transmission outside, transmission in restaurants, transmission in other public places, transmission at Trump rallies. So as the predicate to lock you in your home, hopefully with nobody else visiting or allowed. So if the virus spreads, it stays contained within your family. And then we'll let you know when it's safe to come out, ostensibly when we have a vaccine and we have a distribution mechanism that can get it down to the hoi polloi so that you can once again rejoin society.
Yeah, and it's not even when we get a vaccine, because now that goalpost is moving as well. I mean, it started, as you recall, with 15 days to, stop the spread, was intended solely to preserve the hospital capacity. It was to buy us time, and that is actually the stance when people talk about various experts and the censorship that's coming to people like the signatories of the Great Barrington Declaration. The original intent was never to cure COVID. You can't hide your way out of COVID. It was to allow for a building up of hospital capacity to be able to handle a surge, and thank God we actually did that. We did not largely have nationwide overutilization of our capacity, which would have resulted in unnecessary deaths. That largely didn't occur. The president actually was successful in accomplishing that. But as soon as that passed, then it went from preserving hospital capacity to somehow this was a treatment. And this is not a treatment. At best, it just delays the inevitable, which could be valid if you had some miracle cure weeks away. But, this was back in March and April. We're quite a ways away from that now. So now you hear, well, it's the vaccine, so that, maybe there is a miracle cure, right, or some treatment, the vaccine. But now those goalposts are moving once again, and you hear Cuomo and other people say, well, they're not going to trust the vaccine.
Well, and so, Dr. Savage, I mean, a doctor at Rush said, we still have car accidents, but they're not as severe. So there's therapeutics now. When people come into the hospital, they're not staying a week, they're staying overnight, and then they're leaving.
Yeah.
And that's the
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
The original death rate was about 28%. It was not inconsequential. Now, it never exceeded that of heart attacks. People don't seem to realize that the number one cause of death in the United States remains unchanged. It's cardiovascular disease. Number two is cancer. Currently, the death rate, overall death statistics, is about 7.6% in the United States. It could trend up. Okay, seasonal changes. You're going to see more pneumonias, influenzas, and COVID with winter. That's just kind of what we expect, because you get seasonal variants on a disease like that. Now they're making it sound like this is unexpected. This is actually not unexpected. But the leading causes of death actually are many-fold more common than is COVID. You're talking around 900,000 deaths per year of cardiovascular disease, like 700,000 from cancer. And as tragic as COVID is, it's largely the same population. Elderly people are usually the ones who succumb to cardiovascular disease and cancers, and are also the ones who succumb to COVID. And the Barrington Declaration makes a great argument about, well, what about the deaths that are being caused by the interventions? These are younger people dying from suicide. So, every death is a tragedy, but so are those deaths. And they're never counted as COVID deaths, because when somebody commits suicide, hangs himself or something other horrendous, they're marked as a suicide death. They're not marked as a suicide death secondary to the intervention for COVID.
Dr. Chad Savage, founder of Your Choice Direct Care and policy advisor for the Heartland Institute. Dr. Savage, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper, hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Jay Farner, CEO of Rocket Mortgage. Making the right financial decisions has never been more important. We can help guide you to those right decisions now when they matter most. Mortgage rates are near historic lows, so when you call 8338-ROCKET or visit us at rocketmortgage.com to start your refinance, you'll be well on your way to saving money every month. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 3.125%, APR 3.43%. Right now could be a great time for you to take some positive financial steps forward with a cash-out refinance from Rocket Mortgage, which could give you the boost that you're looking for. In addition, we may be able to help you refinance with little or no out-of-pocket costs. At Rocket Mortgage, we're committed to every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses, giving you the best mortgage experience. Call us today at 8338-ROCKET or go to rocketmortgage.com to learn more.
Rates subject to change. Pay 2.875% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Guys, prioritizing your health now is more important than ever, not only to build your immune system, but to address any chronic health issues you may have. I recommend Low T Center. They exclusively specialize in men's wellness and follow strict medical guidelines for your health and safety. They're one of the leading men's medical providers in the country. Low T Center has reinvented the doctor's visit, making it quick and easy to get all of your levels checked, not just your testosterone. It starts with an annual wellness exam where they do a comprehensive health assessment so you know all the numbers important to your health. If you've been feeling tired, grumpy, have noticed weight gain and loss of muscle mass, these could all be signs of low testosterone levels, low thyroid, or even sleep apnea. Low T Center